Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
You and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
Yes.
a boundary might have been crossed
Yes.
that you, right?
That's
So
correct.
just an example
That's a
of,
good example.
it is a great example. I appreciate that for
Yes.
giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen differences negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Yes, sir. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. This is Working It Out Across Generations, the show where we talk all things conflict, big and small, and we try to give some tips for reconciliation due to our conflict resolution professional background. Now, I'm one of your hosts, Justin.
And I am the other host, Dr. Lynn, and I'm just moving to the song.
Yeah, it is a good song. It is a good song. We still laugh at our intro, certain parts of our intro.
Yeah.
It's talking about she's more good-hearted than me, spirited than me.
You're more good.
Whatever, yeah. Me, you,
still
no.
don't get that.
No, I just don't agree. But absolutely, guys, we're here. We're here for another great topic, another great weekly
Yeah.
conversation. This is something we've been sitting on for a little bit of a minute now.
Yep.
But we thought, why not bring it out to the forefront right now? So, Dr. Lynn, take it over.
Yeah, it's your favorite child bias showing. Listen, I have heard this conversation, or maybe not even a conversation, but arguments and accusations across all different families, backgrounds. This is one that is popular. I know my dad had 5 sisters, and this is the first place that I heard this conversation, but Justin and I sat down yesterday and started to talk about this a little bit. And I know it came up with my parents, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the generational kind of stuff. But I think it's one that needs to be discussed because, to be honest, what I've seen, my experience is when parents are hit with this, they get very defensive or worse, in my view, they actually agree with it. Yeah. Rodney is my favorite. So like, what?
Watching that in real time is like one of the most uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
It's whether you're the favorite or not, I don't know. Probably don't feel the same way if you're the favorite, right? But like, well, I've seen it happen in real time. I'm just like, I don't know. Got to do with this energy. This is weird. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's really, I've seen a mix of reactions. More that's right from the favorite, but some favorites like stop doing that. Like it makes me uncomfortable, and it's not good. It's not cool. I had Justin laughing yesterday because I said my mom is trying to throw my dad under the bus, talking about your dad has a favorite, but I don't. Honey, please. I'm like, who are you fooling? But it is something that I think is important for parents to look at. And I think it's important for children, and no matter what age. So when I say children, I think that while it does come up while we're talking about probably from 5 years old to, teen years, older teen years, for adults, it comes up in ways that I think are about feeling wounded around it, not this is funny or I'm over it, that there's a real wound that hasn't been talked about, and they are trying to confront their parents about it, parent about it. And because for some, it's affecting them in their lives, they can feel not being the favorite, right, has affected how they feel about themselves. And I think it's something that parents, you need to be talking about. If it's not come up, why not ask the question of your kids if they've ever felt like that, and who do they feel, and why do they feel that this is the child that, and maybe if you have quite a few kids, I've heard of multiple favorites too, right? Especially, favorite boy, favorite girl, or just the favorites. And then the kids who feel like they've been kicked to the curb.
Yeah, this is interesting because I've just never seen this as like, I love that you use the word funny, like as some sort of comic, play, right, to get a laugh in the room. I just see it as straight up hurtful in the sense of, it's an energy thing, and I think energy doesn't lie. I think there's a lot of charge in comments like that, or slick little jokes like that, whatever you want to put it, whether you're outright saying this is my favorite or not. There's a lot of charge with that. And I think that young people, I say this all the time, we in some ways, yes, can be more emotional, right? But I think that's just because at certain times, at certain chapters of your life, you just don't have the language to really express yourself perfectly, and whatever that really looks like. Perfect's not even what we're trying to achieve here. So I think that, that's something that is going to keep your child up at night. Like that's something that's going to make them hesitant to come to the dinner table, right? That's going to make them want to start to isolate and all these different things. And those are communication points and data. It's data to work with, right? And I think that I love that you brought up, the work that parents have to do as far as, seeing where that comes from, right? And how that could possibly be something that benefits the energy of the household. Because yes, we're all wounded. We're all walking around with battles that we are not talking about. And all of that is very, very true. And there's just a way to address certain things to make sure that it's even possible as a model to be able to come back to this type of conversation, right? And so I think that as far as foundation setting, right, we talk a lot about foundation setting, and you guys hear me talk about, parents all the time. I promise young people have their own roles in all this, right? But
what roles do young people have in it, you think?
I think we just have to be as open as possible to the conversation, to the uncomfortable feelings that can come up in difficult conversations. I think that our role, is to learn ourselves what it means to keep a door open and not fully close it, right? So not burning bridges and deciphering for ourselves, when it's time to walk away and not. So like, I think we are, even though we come to these things kind of in a different position. I think that a lot of our power comes from honestly being able to like review the game footage of how some of these encounters went and then really deciphering from there just how we do that encounter a little bit better.
Right.
And I think that's like the least that we could do as far as coming to difficult conversations, going away with the information that we have gathered from that encounter and then, coming back to the table. So I think that is on us. Absolutely.
The reason I ask is because my experience is that if you were the problem child, you take that upon yourself as, of course, I'm not going to be the favorite. And therefore, because I am exploring me, or I'm living what's true to me, and I'm challenged by all these different things, or making choices that challenge my parents, therefore I could never be worthy of being the favorite. But kids are developing, and yes, we want them to do the right thing, but I think if you go into parenting expecting that they always will, or if you have multiple children, if you expect all of them to toe the line, then I think you're kidding yourself. And I think it's wrong for young people to take that on, that of, like, it's me, I'm problematic, therefore that's why, of course, they have their favorites and I'm not the favorite. And I will tell you, funny enough, that your grandfather he would say his favorite, and one of them was the one who actually got in the most trouble.
Damn. Never seen it that way. Not in my experience. That's dope. But I've never seen it that way.
Yeah, that was him.
I've never seen it that way.
But he worked with kids who had problems and, were in alternative schools, and that was his thing, right? But I agree that that's not normally who's the favorite or singled out, or who kids feel is the favorite, right?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think that's a really, really great point. And I think to even add to that point, as far as some of the things that, we're taught to do, to live by, and practices to take up as far as, just problem solving and all these different things, right? We get that from our parents, right? And I think a lot of times, hopefully. And I think that, there's honestly times, it's funny where like, we don't talk enough about how parents have like, maybe put their child in a direction that just wasn't fitting for them. Right. Like we try to do like everything as a family, right? Or this is just like how we do things and whatever, right? These are the kind of people that we are. And I think sometimes that hurts your children at the end of the day. And, when you don't lay the foundation of being able to have a conversation about, okay, this is something you taught me. This is like how I gave it a try. It's how I land with it. That's more, I think, of what I mean, like by our role in it, of like, we do at the end of the day have to take, a bit of what you guys are saying with a grain of salt, give it a try out in the real world as far as, when you're in this kind of situation, try this communication tool, or when you're in this situation, try walking away, whatever it is. And I think that the buildup, right, or whatever of that, can make a child feel like, oh, well, I want to keep, like representing my family well and all this other stuff, right? Even though that's not the way I would do things. And, then it becomes a wrestle with themselves of like who they are, but also how they want to represent, their name, their family name, what they come from, right? Everyone feels pride at some point, to be a part of their family, right? And so I just think when you don't leave room for conversation to deal with all of the emotions that come up in those like internal battles between what I want to do, what feels right within me, but also like kind of playing the game in a way of like, this is still the family that I'm a part of. This is how we do things, whatever. Then it can just lead to more of that turning it inward, lashing out, acting out, becoming more of a problem child, and possibly not receiving the same sort of love and the same sort of whatever, right, from a parent that could make them feel like, okay, there's bias here, and I'm not the favorite, and I'm not, I can't possibly be the favorite because I'm running around doing too many different things.
Yeah.
So you think that you just need to open up conversation for that?
I think you do, and I think that, but I also think that there's so much here, right? As a parent, as people, really, as human beings, who and what you're familiar with is always going to feel better to you, right? So if your child is just like you, right, then that could end up being your favorite child, right? If your child does everything you ask them to do and is great grades, blah 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 blah, that could end up being your favorite child. And while we all have our feelings and our feelings come up, I think when you put that dynamic out freely, I think that is harmful. It definitely hurts. Or when you place that demand, well, if you would just, then, right, then I could feel the same. Like, I think that is not what parenting's about. I do. I think that as hard as it may be to really kind of share the love and equally and marvel in and just really love things about each of your children. I mean, if you're an only child, then this is one that you don't have to deal with necessarily, because I told you last night when we were talking about this topic that I thought that there were friends of ours, because it was just my sister and I thought that there were friends of ours who were the same age, all of that stuff, who my mom would have loved to be their parents. So maybe you could be an only child and your parents might wish for somebody else's child. So you're dealing with the same kind of favoritism. It's just not your siblings, but you can see and you can tell. And I think that if that's what you're dealing with, then be honest. And if that's what you're feeling, children, then be honest and have the conversation, right? So generationally for me, as I said, I grew up, my dad had 5 sisters. He had his favorite. I don't know if here's what I know my aunts would always say, that my dad was my grandmother's favorite, right? And they would even come, well, David's the favorite. David can do no wrong, blah, 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 blah. I grew up hearing that all the time. I felt like it's interesting because my sister was referred to as the smart one. I actually was smart, but I was creative. But creativity was not valued when I went to school and where I went to school as a Black girl. So I never heard that label. I was the lazy one. I don't know. I tuned it out after a while because it was hurtful. But it did not feel like I was the one that was doing the best in my mother's eyes. And now, as life goes on, I'm sure my sister will probably say she thinks that I might have been favored. I know my dad, as I said, his favorite sister was the one who got into the most trouble. I wasn't really allowed to get into trouble, but whatever I could do to just not have to toe the line and do it creatively, I did. And I think that he catered more toward that, although I feel like there was a tremendous amount of support and love. But I know generationally, I grew up hearing parents saying, that's my favorite, this is my favorite. And I could see the pain on kids' faces. And I first thought it was normal, like, oh, you're supposed to have favorites. But the more I kept hearing the conversation all the way as an adult and then as a parent myself, the more that I realized that it is wounding, and it is something that you should talk about because the love should be there, right? And I know for some parents, it's harder with different children. I get that too. But does that mean that the other one or two, however, have to become your favorite? but rather that the relationship is different with each one, but the love is there, right, for each of them, so that there isn't that favorite in the room. There's the one that's easier to get along with, right?
I like that a lot.
Yeah, the one that you understand better than the one that you simply don't understand, but it's your child and you love them. And that's, and that is how it is. And they're not any less than
I like that a lot.
the others.
Yeah, I think I think my generational take is just like, I'm a younger sibling. So I think that there's just a generational perspective there in the first place. I don't know if anyone has seen or heard of any sort of study out there, right? But there are studies out there that show that like younger siblings are more likely to be the problem children and all this other stuff, get more into more. Yeah, I'm a younger sibling too, right? So like, and all that stuff. And I think that, there could be some truth to that, right? However, I agree. I've never, even as that younger sibling, even as that trouble kid, that problem maker and all that stuff, right? I never felt the love was different. I never felt like, like the attention was different. It really was more of just the way that they went about relations with me and my brother were different because we're different people, right? And my parents, being people, thank God, who embrace difference. They don't run away from difference. They don't try to, they never tried to dim my light to make his brighter or vice versa, right? They really did try to embrace, okay, who's this kid and what is he into and how does he need to be spoken to and how does he need to just receive me, right, versus me, which is a different experience. And so I know for me, a lot of, from what I've seen, a lot of younger siblings feel just like we've talked about, how could I be the favorite? I get into trouble. I do this. And my older sibling is looked at as this, right? Not just from my parents, but from the external world, right? So, I know for me, in my experience, shout out my brother, but this dude was an athlete and, everyone knew him and, face of school magazines or whatever it was, right? So he got a lot of attention. He got a lot of love. And it was reinforced to me quite a lot, that this is the guy, this is someone you want to model yourself after. And bro, shout out you. I love you. But I was like, that's not me. Why would I want that to be me, right? If I know that's not me, right? I want to be loved and tended to for who I am. And I know I came home with a lot of those battles that I was facing, right? And I love that my parents were always open to receiving the data that I'm giving them because they knew that there was an element to this conversation that they honestly would have to like surrender themselves to, right? So for instance, right, when a kid is at school all the time and telling you about their school day and all that stuff, right? Like anything that happens at school is pretty much out of your parents' hands because that's another extension of their life, right? It's a whole other world that they're reporting to every single day. And so there are parts of the conversation which I imagine are very tough where you have to say like, I hate what I'm hearing as a parent, right? Or whatever, but this is how they're receiving me, or this is the messages they're getting, and this is whatever, right? So I'm grateful that I've had parents that always have had the ability to have the conversation, but I know that that's not the same for a lot of my fellow younger siblings out there. Even only children that I know, friends that I have, right? Their parents have said to either me or to another one of the friends, right? Like, why can't you be more like him? Or I've seen it work all the time because I've been the youngest person in the room in my professional career most of my life, right? I hear all the time from parents like, oh, I wish my kid came out like you, right? Or whatever. And it's like, I've just never seen that as something being on the receiving end. Like, I've never seen that as something to like enjoy with you as a moment. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very much like, no, like I've got my own problems. I've got my own stuff. You probably don't want another me running around in your house or whatever, right? And this kid is great I've spent time with this person, right? Absolutely just lock in on some of the things that, they're telling you that they're into, right? Differences in your kids are a good thing. And I don't think that there should be pedestals put or competition in the household, because they're probably dealing with that in the outside world every single day, especially if you're in shared spaces with an older sibling as well. That's like even harder.
Well, I wonder what your brother interpreted. I mean, because I'm just thinking about when you have a child that gets into more challenges, challenging situations that the parents have to give attention, it can feel like that child is the favorite, right?
Yes.
So I don't know.
He probably did feel like that. I'm not going to speak for him.
Yeah, I'm not either.
He'll never come on this show. I hope he would.
He needs to come on this show.
Yeah, brother, she might try to pressure you. I'm not pressuring you. I'm not saying this at all to try to pressure you or come to you, whatever. Right?
We're going to put you on video and answering the question and throw it up on the show then, if you're not going to come on yourself.
So these are collective decisions, brother. No, we will not be doing that. And we will argue about that until however long it needs to be argued. However, he probably would say, like, that he had a different experience, right?
But
that's another thing.
Did he feel it as favoritism? That
yeah. I mean, it's a different thing, right? And I think that goes back to my entire point, right? Your kids are different people. They have different experiences. Everything lands differently for them. So unless you pose the question, unless you, create the space, create the foundation to have that conversation, then you won't know how your own parenting is honestly like affecting each individual child.
Right.
And I think that that's more damaging than even just like doing the whole, like, well, this is my favorite thing. Yes, that sucks. And if you don't leave room for your child on the receiving end to say, yo, that sucked, that hurt me, we were at like Thanksgiving and you're over here making me not thankful, like, then that's not a productive dynamic.
Right.
And so I'm just about making sure the conversation can come up. And I think that, there are times probably in our own household where we probably should have had the conversation a little bit more intentionally for everyone's sake, or from everyone's sake and perspective. But I know, like, as we've gotten older, some of these conversations come up and they've been really, really great ones, right? And it's always easier to look in hindsight, but I think that's the thing that we're trying to not correct, but give a different approach to, right? That's the easier thing to do, to just do, and then look in hindsight 2 years later, 5 years later, even if you're in a similar spot, 2 years later, 5 years, it's always easier to look in hindsight, and we're trying to get ahead of the problem. So
right. And open up a conversation. I mean, I think that there are a lot of good things, good topics that parents could be talking with their kids about. I know that we get into worrying, and especially the way the world is now, and we want to talk about, I hope we're talking about how you're doing, right? But what about something like this where the dynamic was set in the home and in the heart, and it's affecting, has affected, and it's something that you can go back to, that you can open up the door and really start to have a conversation, not to make each other feel badly, to shame each other, but I think it's just interesting to know how things are landing. As a parent, I think most parents do the very best that they can and try to do better than their parents, or if you had great parents, try to be as great as they were, but it don't always land well. So
no.
know, I mean, because I think the closest that parents that I've been around have come to saying that it don't always land well is that, I can't wait till you have kids. Just wait and see, like, yes, there's a part of that, you can't wait, because then you see, they're doing the same thing to you. You got one just like I had one. But the thing that's really underneath that, though, is that they're trying to tell you how it's landing, how what you're doing, saying, parenting is landing with them. And if you aren't many of us are generation, well, I'm the mom, it's too bad, or what, right? If you aren't of that, or looking to get away from that, then don't divert, don't defend, really open up and listen and find out how things are landing.
Yeah, someone's gonna feel empowered, and someone's gonna feel less than, and I'm pretty sure, I hope, for the parents out there, you want everyone to feel empowered in your household, even yourself, right? And these are very tough conversations, right? But what better way to model strength than to say that sucks to hear. I hate that I put you in that position, and I hear you. And what can I do to change that? I think that's just, at the end of the day, an empowerment thing. It makes everyone stronger. So.
And I think also, there are some kids, young people that are cool to say, well, I'm good, I don't care. Like, I'm my favorite. So sure. If that wasn't, because I can't be that. I can't be anything but who I am. And if that means that I'm not the favorite, then hey, I'm not. And I'm going to keep on pushing, and we can still have a great relationship, but I'm good. I'm gonna do me.
Yeah, I'm a mix of both. So I relate to this conversation a lot.
But if you really want to have the conversation, right, then you want to start out with 3 ways to tell if your bias is coming through, because there are parents that I know are willing to admit that they actually do have a favorite, or they feel like they favored one more than the other. And if you want to find out what that has, the effect that it's had, then I think you want to have a conversation. So the first thing that you want to do, how do you tell, right? Your children pointed out to you. This I've seen, no, like I said, if your children are pointing it out to you, I don't think it's anything to dismiss. I think that's your first sign that somehow you are continuously favoring somebody or using language that sounds like you're favoring someone, and that you might want to really go within and think about this information that's come in front of you, and whether or not there are things that you have done and do that substantiate their points.
Yeah, your kids are trying to tell you so many things, right? And there's just so much data to work with in what they're saying, that if you are dismissive or not even just open to hearing what they have to say, to be quite frank, you're not serving them as best as you possibly could, right? That's like being a business owner, right? And not listening to what your consumers want, as far as like, this works, I'd like some tweaks on this,
right? And
I'm good here, but I could be a little bit better if I got a little more of it. Like, those are such obvious notes and data that, like, you have to take into consideration, especially if you're a parent. And I think that it's one of those things where your kids are always going to try to talk to you before they don't. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just the more you build up that and exercise that muscle of dismissiveness, or you're just a kid, I don't have to listen, I don't want to hear any of it, whatever it is, then you're training the wrong muscles. And I just think, kids they know themselves, they know what works for them, they know what doesn't, at least at that time.
How you make them feel.
They know how you make them feel. They know when it's a good feeling and when it's not a good feeling, mm-hmm. right? So, like, the least you could do is just, okay, like, what do they have to say? What are they feeling? How am I landing for my child? I think that's a baseline question that needs to be asked to yourself every single day for a parent.
And just on this,
as I'm not a parent, I know, but please.
Just on this, just the piece of you felt loved, but did you feel like your brother was our favorite?
Absolutely. There's no doubt. There's 100%. Yes, I felt that he was the favorite.
Okay.
I was the problem child, so I got more attention. 1,000%. I got more access, I feel like, to you guys, right? However, even though it seemed, and this is also an older sibling trait. This is not singular to my brother, right? Like older siblings, y'all have a lot of responsibility put on you. And, I think that a lot of that responsibility gets put on you early.
Yeah.
And whether you handle it well or not, I think that overall in a parent's mind, they think, okay, they're equipped to handle it. So
and I can depend on that.
I can depend on them. They're tough. They're disciplined enough in whatever area, whether it's emotionally or just in their own lives, where you feel like you can keep coming back to them. Absolutely. Right. And I think that as I said, there's a lot of weight that comes with that, but there's also, sort of a disconnect that comes on between that older sibling and the parents over time, right? With the younger sibling, that's more problematic and stuff, because then it becomes a thing where it's like, all right, well, the older one, we already know he's good or they're good and whatever. And we don't have to worry about them. And we can just let them live their lives and handle any and everything that comes on in their own experiences, right? While not really tending to their needs and their emotions and their experiences, because you're wrapped up with the younger sibling. So I feel like we are a living testament to that in our own ways, right? However, again, like I'm so grateful that my parents were very much just like able to listen and take, that data that we're talking about with a grain of salt.
I don't think we did too well with it at first, though.
No, I don't either. I agree wholeheartedly that you guys didn't do well at first.
Yeah.
1,000%. And the only reason I say it that way is because, again, like you guys were and are still learning on the fly. It's a thing you're doing forever, right? Mm-hmm. And my brother played football. I was a dancer growing up, right? So like it was, all right, we're going to his games, right? But if I had a class or a show or whatever or performance, right, it was the same sort of love, the same sort of attentiveness and stuff like that. So I just feel like it's one of those things where, I certainly gave way more data to work with, but I only think that's off proximity. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, not trying to speak for my brother, but at least for the older siblings, right, I understand as that younger one who was a problem child, right, how that disconnect between your parents can honestly do a lot of damage for you guys in the sense of wanting to talk about certain things that, you brought up before, but maybe didn't get the same level of attention. And that's damaging. And I see that. So, yeah.
It's interesting. I'm laughing because the energy that it takes to be with a child that challenges you more, and then you see them grow and come through and continue to blossom. Like the laughter is like, oh my God, we got through that. Like, wow. Yes. And I think that happens. Giving honor and kudos to parents, that it can feel like it's less energy here. So that feels like my favorite. Right. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Okay. Notice how you talk and interact with each child. I've been in households where nobody has to say who's the favorite. I can
feel it.
I can tell from the way you are interacting, right, and talking and speaking about.
That's the thing.
That child, that this is your favorite here, and then I can look around the room and see the faces of the rest of the kids when you talk and interact. And see that not only do they know, but it hurts. It hurts them to see that, and and I can only imagine that it must hurt when you know that is not who you can ever be.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's real, and I think this is just not like something you see on TV. Like it's not like this is real. I think this really happens. And, you know, as far as, like I said, the energy, there's a lot of charge in comments, as well as, you know, I love that you brought up the speaking of, right? It's like, it's almost like signals go off in the children that aren't that, right? That's being said, or that's happening, or there's things that aren't being said or aren't being, you know, celebrated or brought up when your name comes up. And I think that it's something to really take notice of. People are watching and taking notes, right, of everything around them. So you at least don't want to be someone that's not open to the fact that, like, someone outside of the family can say, like, yo, like, you, like, are you not reading the room? Like, you're kind of, you're gassing this one kid, and then there's 3 other beautiful ones here who are accomplished in their own ways, who are great in their own ways, and there hasn't been the same level of praise or you know, just honestly, proudness. I think that's another thing that comes up too. You know, we want our parents proud of us. I don't know a single kid that doesn't want to make their parents proud. So if you at least aren't even saying that you're proud of all of them or consistently, that is going to come up energy wise in any sort of transfer. So
and the last tip is you get defensive anytime this comes up. That's you know, that is a way to tell that your bias is showing, because if you're not at least willing to listen to how they've decided, like how and why they've decided that this is your favorite child, then it's never going to really get resolved, right? And I think that it needs to get resolved if it's being brought up, because then there's discomfort with it. And like I said, I've been in rooms where the favorite is very happy to say they're the favorite and laud it over their siblings, right? And join in with the criticisms of, well, you know, this is why.
I'm trying to move away from judgments, but those people suck. Like, I'm sorry. You guys suck. I'll say it. Continue.
You know, you get defensive anytime this comes up.
Yeah, I agree. Just, you know, ease up on that. You know, that's more telling than you even just doing the whole gassing up and praising one child. There's a lot more in the defensiveness to me that is to work with as far as data. So definitely be careful there. And I think next we should want to talk about just 3 tips to give you for if you're going to address this kind of dynamic, right? If this is a dynamic that's been set, if this is a conversation that's come up in the household, and whether it's gone well or not, you want to just be able to keep the door open, to be able to keep having the conversations. Here's just some tips that we came up with to make that possible. First, individualize the relationships within the family, right? So, for example, what I mean by this is, I know in my household, right, I had road trips with my dad where it was just me and my dad, and we just got to talk the entire way, us two, right? And just, you know, really give attention to each other, right? I've had so many lunches and dinners with my mom, just one-on-one, right, where we do the same exact thing. And then I've also had plenty of, you know, doing activities, whether it's, you know, going to play golf or some other sport or watching sport, whatever it is, with my brother, right? I spend that time with my brother, right? And it individualizes, you know, the experience of everyone while still holding up these, you know, familial values and structures, right? I think that it just, you know, is a beneficial thing to make everyone feel seen, to feel heard, to feel like they can be themselves, to feel tended to. And I understand 100% this could be difficult the more children that are in the household. I'm not saying, you know, if you're like Nick Cannon out there, you got a bunch of kids, right? It's going to be just, okay, we're going over here and this is cool. And it's tough. It's absolutely tough. It's tough in any dynamic, right? But I think that it's one tip that for sure will help, just to, like I said, help everyone feel, you know, safe and secure within themselves while still holding up the value and structure of the family. So,
yeah, I think that I definitely didn't do that enough. when you all were coming up. You did a lot of stuff together. I did a lot of travel for work, and so brought you all together. I think there were times when we did separate. I spent,
for sure.
Jabari being the oldest, spent more time there. But I do think that it is important. I like this one a lot. If you can do it, even if it's just in small periods of time.
Absolutely.
To set a timer and give everybody their time. If you've got it to give, I know too. Look, it's a lot of energy. The more kids, the more energy you're expending.
1,000%.
And if you're in a relationship, you're co-parenting and you're still together, then you got to give time to the relationship. And if you're working, then you got to get to work. And I understand. But I still think somehow, some way to make sure that you check in with each one individually can be a real way of learning who they are, right? I grew up with parents who were more quick to tell me who I am than for me to find out and learn who I am, for me to tell them who, what my thoughts are. And I think you gotta be able to know that the best way for them to be able to leave and be full-grown adults is for them to find out who they are and to be able to share those thoughts with you.
I like that. Yeah, that's perfect. Next, we said check-ins with each child, right? Those check-ins, I love that you brought up even the small things, right? So that's making me think, let's say there's one child who, needs more time in those check-ins to just like really kind of dump on you, like all the stuff going on, right? They maybe need like an hour in those check-ins with you, right? So if it can't be over a full lunch or something, if it's phone call, right? That child might need an hour, right? There could be another one that is, way more secure or set or comfortable in their emotions and doesn't really need that much time, right? They just need like 30 minutes or even 15 because they don't even like talking on the phone like that or whatever it is, right? Then giving that to them, right? And I think just like I said, individualizing the experience of those conversations, really listening to what each has to say, working from what they have to say as them, not from, fresh off this conversation with your sibling and now I'm talking to you and we could try this because they're trying. No, it's fully, okay, I'm talking to you. This is what we're dealing with. And keep them consistent. I think that's the big thing, the individual check-ins you want to keep consistent as well as, the family meetings and things of that nature. Because we did both as far as family meetings, but also some individual check-ins. And I think that there's just a benefit to both. It speaks to everything we've been saying so far as holding up the standards of family while still being able to have the freedom to find who you are and, not have to conform in certain areas of who you are. So absolutely.
Yeah, not enough check-ins. I didn't do them as you got older, especially with your brother, I think. And so I think I understand how things can fall by the wayside, especially depending on what stage of life you're in, your family's in. Yeah. But the check-ins, I think, are a good idea because they talk about the strong ones. Check in on the strong ones because we tend to give off the illusion that we're just fine. We're taking it in. Or I think as a child, you can say to yourself, like, oh, they've got enough. Their hands full with the other, my siblings, so I'm not going to bother talking to them about what's going on with me. I'm going to deal with it myself. And I think that can be harmful.
Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, kind of a big one. We could have made this, like 8 or whatever, but own it, explain your perspective, apologize, and just ask how to change it.
Yeah.
These are such easier said than done tips, all in one on this one, right? But I should have definitely broke that up a little bit. But I mean, absolutely, right? Like, again, the model for a parent, like from a parent to a child, right? To say like, wow, like I hate the way that landed. I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where I was coming from. This is where, I thought I was going, and I see how it landed differently. I'm very sorry, and what can we do, right? And I think the we is important too, because it's just reminding them that you're a team. You know what I mean? Like, the child doesn't have to do these things alone. I think that this is nothing but, as I've talked about, empowerment and an empowering thing for a young person to see in an adult that they see as, a superhero, right? To let their guard down for a minute and say, I didn't have the right answer in that moment. I didn't have, I usually on lock, I guess, in your mind, right? But I promise I'm a human being, right? And I'm figuring this out with you, right? I think that, again, very vulnerable thing to say to your child. And I just remember all the times that I've heard from my parents, what I'm saying right now and what we just laid out right here. And it's absolutely led to the relationship that we have today, 100%. So,
yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's never too late.
No,
I really do.
I agree.
I really just hate that you had the perspective, the feeling that your brother was the favorite, and that so clearly that was communicated by something that myself, your dad, whoever, like either one or both of us did. But at the same time, for me to own it, I don't think it's this big deal that people make it out to be. I think you can own it. I think that's what our kids want from us, is the older they get, the more that they see that we're just human beings, right? And especially once they become parents themselves. So owning it shouldn't be that hard, even if, like me, you never had parents that owned it. Right? You can still own it yourself. You can still say, yeah, I did that. Or even if I thought that I was doing something different, but clearly that's not how it landed with you. So I own it, right? That I did this and it made you feel this way. Explain your perspective. Again, like I said, apologize. I think we're so bad at apologies in general as society, but certainly parents, apologies. I got like 2 in my lifetime from mine, and we need to learn how to do that, and we need to ask the question, so how do I change that, and how do you, actually the next part is, how do you move on through that so it doesn't set you back for your entire life?
Like that. That's really great. Yeah, this one definitely hit home for sure. We definitely, we're just like any other family. We really can't stress that enough. We're having these conversations all the time, behind the scenes, on camera, off camera. Like it's something that we just see as, it's strength. Like there's a lot of strength in being vulnerable and in vulnerability. And it sucks that we live in a world that, tries to make it seem like an apology is a sign of weakness, right? Or owning a mistake is like, this character trait. Like you're this character trait of some sort of negativity, right? Like, and I think that the more that we have these conversations, the more that we leave these doors open, the more that we don't burn these bridges so quickly, right? The more that we're not taught to burn bridges first rather than keeping a door open. And the more that we model that, then the better chance that we have in the future of, our children having different experiences.
Yeah.
So
I agree. This has been a good one.
Absolutely.
I hope that you all are taking away something that you can use, and just know there's so much love in the conversation that as parents, it's a tough job, even when your kids do it well, right?
Absolutely.
It's a tough job.
Not tough for you guys.
Yeah. And so there's so much love in what we're saying about this particular topic. It just really have the conversation, encourage you to do that, and encourage your children to be able to be open and honest about what they're feeling.
Absolutely. That was great. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your vulnerability.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I literally said before we got on, I was like, this is not going to be personal. So,
And yet it was.
Here it was, very personal, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing this with you guys. Absolutely.
In real time, we are.
Absolutely. So if you want to see more Working It Out Across Generations, please tune into e360tv.com, Trajectory Channel, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV as well. You can also check us out on Facebook at Working It Out TV Show, as well as YouTube at Working It Out Across Generations. If you want to send any love, show topics, comments, whatever's going on, conflicts you're experiencing in your own day-to-day life, please reach out to at Working It Out Across the Generations at e360tvlive.com. Guys, like we say all the time, every share, every follow, every comment, every piece of engagement truly does mean the world to us. We're just trying to make the world a little bit of a better place, one conversation at a time. And you guys are helping us do that, right? So we really do mean it from the bottom of our hearts when we say thank you just for being here, for rocking with us. You know what we say? Conflict is here to teach you something about yourself. So go out there and find out what that is. I'm Justin.
And I am Dr. Lynn, always.
See you next week.
See you.